Forrest Bradford, a political newcomer and a Democrat, is stepping up to challenge incumbent State Representative Nick Boldyga, who's a Republican. Bradford told us climate change is a primary concern for him. He believes it's critically important to take steps to assure the health of the planet for future generations. We spoke in the studio about a range of other issues, but began with why now was the right time for him to run.
It's an opportunity that I have currently. I've wanted to run prior, but I was a caregiver for my parents for a while, and now that part of my life is finished, and I feel like giving back to the community.
So several issues that you call attention to on your campaign website as priorities. Thought we could tick through a couple of them here today. One that jumped out at me, because people talk about it a lot here in Western Massachusetts, that's infrastructure, roads, bridges, things like that. East-West Rail is getting a lot of buzz right now, people talking about the need for that. But on your website, you really point to the problems with roads. If elected, how would you advocate for the funding, for the need for the road repair, as opposed to the rail service that's getting so much attention?
Well, I wouldn't use the word opposed. That doesn't seem to quite fit. The transportation needs are many and varied. We have people who live in Agawam, Southwick, and Granville, who hit potholes all the time and are dealing with roads and sidewalks that are really poorly attended to. Of course, if they're local streets, then that's more of a local issue. However, on the state level, the state roads are a big factor. Driving a school bus is interesting because I've been able to learn about the cost of repair to the town for things such as school buses. And driving my own vehicle and knowing how expensive they are, people get frustrated when they hit a pothole because they know that that's going to cost them. And is it better for the state to fix the roads? Does it make more financial sense for us who live in homes in the towns of Agawam, Granville, and Southwick?
Which is your district,
That's
if
right.
you were elected.
When I am elected.
There you go. And so for you, also, you mentioned, quote, halting incessant spam telephone calls.
Yes.
And you pointed to that as a priority. Not something we hear about very often when people are campaigning.
Yes.
Why was it something you wanted to call attention to?
I think inspiring people to become involved in their community requires more of a peace that they have at their home. And one thing that we all face is constant interruption in our lives. Someone was telling me that in 1 week, we have more decisions that we make in our lives than our grandparents did in an entire year. I don't know if the human mind has really adjusted to all of this so far. Yet, caring for my parents while I was helping my mother or sorting out medications or working with my father's injuries, I would have to answer a telephone call for it to be a fake call. Now, telephone companies have the technology and the know-how to prevent these from coming into the certain forms of communication that we have.
But there's a national do not call registry that you can put yourself on at the end of those calls. What would you do at the state level that would be different?
This is a limited amount that they're able to do, but we can look into legislation and look into the telephone companies themselves to see why aren't they preventing these calls from coming in. They can do this and charge you $3 per month. I don't think that's fair.
What do you mean charge $3 per month?
Well, for $3 a month, for instance, if you have a Verizon phone, they will go ahead and they will block these calls from coming in.
Oh, okay. A service that they'll provide you. Interesting.
Yes,
okay.
Interesting. And with an estimated 4 million telephones out there in the state of Massachusetts, we have a population of about 6 million here in Mass. That equates to about $12 million for the telephone companies per month. So I think in order for us to make improvements in our own towns, we should address things that take people's time away from them. Quality, peaceful time. And one of the things that citizens are facing, every single citizen that I know that has a telephone of some sort, is interrupted throughout the day by these calls, and it's unnecessary. And so we can do some investigation into this and we can find out how. And if they know how, which they do, the telephone companies, then maybe we should enact some form of legislation where we can prevent these calls from happening with no cost to the citizen.
Something else you point out on your website as something that you would stand up for if elected is really standing up for small business as a instead of corporations.
Correct.
Question 2 on the ballot: how will you vote for that?
Familiarize me with this.
So it's a question that would look at political spending, and if you vote yes on it, it would form a commission that would ultimately change the U.S. Constitution, looking at that issue of large corporation versus smaller. This is often called Citizens United.
Well, Citizens United was a poor decision, in my opinion, from the Supreme Court, which has given corporations just incredible power. A lot of people work for large corporations, right here in the towns of Agawam, Southwick, and Granville.
And so you would, I imagine, would then be a yes vote on that, because the commission would be established, and then eventually what the commission would do, as this question says, is a yes vote would be in favor of establishing a 15-member citizens commission that would advocate for amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Although that would be a long road, right? Because to change the Constitution would take 38 other states saying yes.
Any decision that you make has complications to it, and so it needs to be looked into carefully. And so instead of creating like a large bureaucracy, we have to look into things to make sure that it makes sense for the common good. If you're part of a corporation such as ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which my opponent is part of, it's a group of lawyers that put together, and representatives from states and governments, that put together legislation which favor the corporations. And so if we have this as representatives for us, it's not helping the middle class. And many times places or corporations such as this, they disguise themselves as doing public good, when really they aren't doing public good. And if we give Olive Garden and some other restaurants the advantage when it comes to taxes and advertising, things of this nature, then we're doing a disservice to the local businesses that we have.
You mentioned a moment ago your opponent, that's currently
Yes.
the incumbent state representative, Nick
Yes.
Boldyga, who's a Republican, you're a Democrat.
Yes.
On the Southwick Democratic Committee's Facebook page, they characterized Mr. Boldyga as a, quote, far-right extremist candidate. Do you agree with that?
I think that we need to drop political lines and understand that we're all humans. I know that we should share a common cause of patriotism. And patriotism entails caring about your neighbor, and it also entails having quite a bit of altruistic nature to yourself. So if you are caring more for your neighbor than what's going to benefit you, we create a better world. I do not like to use words like extremism, because I think that that's not a correct definition.